I was standing in the hallway with my coat still on when she said it. "We think it's better if you leave tonight." She didn't shout. She didn't whisper either. She said it like she was talking about the weather. I remember staring at the clock on the wall. It was New Year's Eve, 10 minutes before midnight. The house was full of music and laughter, but somehow none of it touched me. It felt like I was behind glass, watching a life I was no longer part of. My son didn't look at me. He stood near the window, his hands in his pockets, nodding like he agreed with everything she said. I waited for him to say something, anything. He didn't. That silence hurt more than her words. I had lived in that house for 6 years. I cooked there. I cleaned there. I folded laundry and wiped fingerprints off doors that weren't even mine. And in one quiet sentence, I became temporary, disposable, in the way. She said the bus station wasn't far. She even offered to call a cab. That was the moment I realized this wasn't a fight. It was a decision already made. And I was the only one who hadn't been told. I wasn't a woman with big dreams. I grew up believing that peace mattered more than success, that showing up mattered more than being seen. I worked as a receptionist at a small dental clinic for most of my life. Same desk, same chair, same morning coffee in a chipped blue mug. I liked routine. It made life feel manageable. I married young. My husband passed away early. Suddenly, it was just me and my son. I raised him quietly, packed his lunches, went to parent-teacher meetings alone, sat in bleachers alone. I never felt sorry for myself. I told myself this was just life. When he grew up and got married, I thought my hardest years were behind me. I believed family meant safety. When they asked me to move in, I said yes without hesitation. I sold my small apartment, used the money to help them with the house. They said it was our home. I believed them. At first, I felt useful again. I watched the kids when they needed help. I cooked when they were busy. I stayed quiet when they were tired. I didn't need much, just respect, just a place. I didn't know how easily both could be taken away. It didn't happen all at once. It was small things at first. Eating alone, being asked to rest during gatherings, hearing my name used like a sigh. But that night was different. The living room was full of guests, champagne glasses clinking, someone counting down seconds to midnight. She pulled me aside near the hallway. Her body was turned toward the party, not toward me, like I was already gone. She said the words slowly, carefully. "You're getting older. You need care. This isn't working anymore." I waited for my son to step in. He didn't. I felt my chest tighten, but my voice stayed calm. "I can manage," I said. She smiled, not kindly, politely. "That's not the point." That sentence stayed with me. Not the point. I looked at my son then, really looked at him. He avoided my eyes. "Mom," he said finally, "let's not do this tonight." That was it. No defense, no explanation, just dismissal. I nodded because I didn't know what else to do. I went to the guest room and packed the few things that were mine. I moved quietly, like someone breaking into their own life. When I walked back through the hallway, the countdown had started. 10, 9, 8. No one noticed me leave. Not even him. Outside, the air was sharp and cold. I stood on the sidewalk with my suitcase, and realized I didn't know where I was going yet. The bus station lights glowed in the distance. I started walking. Behind me, fireworks exploded in the sky. Ahead of me, the night was quiet. For the first time in my life, I felt truly unwanted, and I had no idea that the next 40 minutes would quietly change everything I believed about myself. The bus station smelled like cold metal and old coffee. I sat on a hard plastic chair near the wall, my suitcase between my feet, my hands folded in my lap like I was waiting to be called into an office. The digital clock above the ticket counter blinked red numbers, 10:22 p.m. I kept staring at it, like time might explain something to me if I looked long enough. I replayed the night again and again in my head. Her voice, my son's silence, the way the house door closed behind me without hesitation. I wondered when I had become so easy to remove. I wasn't angry yet. Anger requires energy. What I felt was heavier than that. It was the quiet question I had avoided for years, finally speaking out loud. Was I really in the way? I thought about all the times I stayed upstairs so I wouldn't interrupt, all the meals I ate alone, all the times I told myself I was lucky just to be there. Maybe I had taught them how to treat me. That thought hurt the most. I wrapped my coat tighter around myself and leaned back against the cold wall. The station wasn't empty, but no one looked at anyone else. Everyone was tired. Everyone was somewhere between leaving and arriving. I felt like I belonged to neither place. I pulled my phone out and stared at the screen. No messages, no missed calls. Midnight was coming, and no one was counting down with me. For the first time since my husband passed, I let myself feel the loneliness fully. I didn't push it away. I didn't distract myself. I sat there and let it hurt. Overthinking, the longest night of my life. My thoughts moved backward. I remembered the day I sold my apartment, how I handed over the check with a smile, how proud I felt helping my son. I remembered telling friends, "It's easier this way. We're family." I wondered if I had confused sacrifice with love. I asked myself questions I was afraid to answer. Why didn't I keep something just for me? Why did I believe staying quiet would protect me? Why did I think being useful was the same as being valued? I felt small sitting there with my suitcase, not because of where I was, but because of how I had allowed my life to shrink. A tear slipped down my cheek, then another. I tried to wipe them away quickly, embarrassed, even though no one was watching. But my chest tightened, and suddenly I was crying the way you do when you've held everything in for too long. Quiet, shaking, trying not to fall apart in public. I bent forward, resting my elbows on my knees, my face in my hands. I wasn't crying because I was homeless for the night. I was crying because I had forgotten myself for years. The moment everything paused. "Ma'am, are you okay?" The voice was gentle, not rushed, not curious in the wrong way. I looked up, startled. A woman stood in front of me, maybe late 20s or early 30s. She wore a simple coat and held a paper cup of coffee. Her eyes were tired, but kind. "I'm fine," I said quickly. It was automatic. The lie came easily. She didn't argue, she just nodded and sat down a few seats away, leaving space between us. That small respect did something to me. After a minute, she spoke again. "You don't look fine." I laughed softly, more like a breath than a sound. "No," I admitted. "I'm not." She offered me the coffee. I grabbed an extra by accident. I hesitated, then took it. Our fingers brushed briefly, and I felt something unexpected. Human connection. We sat in silence for a moment. I didn't feel pressured to speak, which somehow made me want to speak. "I was told to leave my home tonight." She didn't ask why. She didn't interrupt, so I kept going. I told her about the party, about the hallway, about my son's silence. The words came out slowly at first, then faster, like they had been waiting. I told her how invisible I had felt for years, how tired I was of proving my worth by staying quiet. She listened like my story mattered. When she finished, she didn't say anything dramatic. She didn't tell me I was strong or brave. She said something simple. "You didn't deserve that." Those 4 words felt like a hand reaching into my chest and loosening something tight. The silent shift, a thought I had never allowed before. She checked the time on her phone and stood up. "I need to make a quick call," she said. "I'll be right back." I nodded, holding the warm cup in my hands. As she walked away, something inside me shifted. Not hope, not yet, but awareness. I realized something important sitting on that cold chair. No one had kicked me out of my life. I had walked out of a place that no longer honored me. That thought scared me, because it meant I had choices, and choices come with responsibility. The woman came back a few minutes later and sat beside me again. She looked different now, focused, certain. "Whatever happens next," she said quietly, "you won't be alone tonight." I didn't know what she meant, but for the first time since leaving that house, I felt steady, like I had stopped falling. That night didn't change my life loudly. There was no miracle, no sudden rescue, but something important had begun. The woman beside me took a slow breath before speaking again. "My ride is delayed," she said, "and honestly, I'm glad." She didn't explain why. She didn't need to. She looked at me the way people do when they've already decided something in their heart. "I work nearby," she continued. "Community center. We help people restart. Not in big, dramatic ways, just small steps." I nodded, not sure what to say. "I'm not asking you to decide anything tonight," she added quickly, "but I don't like the idea of you sitting here alone." The bus announcement echoed through the station. Destinations, delays, final calls. I looked down at my suitcase. It felt heavier than it had earlier. "I don't even know where I'm going," I admitted. She smiled gently. "That's okay. Most people don't. They just pretend they do." She offered me a ride to a small motel near the community center. Nothing fancy, just clean, safe. I hesitated. Then I remembered the hallway, the silence, the way I was told to leave like it was nothing. I stood up. That was the first choice I made for myself in a long time. A night that didn't fix everything, but held me together. The motel room was small, beige walls, thin blankets, a humming heater. But when I closed the door behind me, something strange happened. I exhaled. No one was waiting for me to clean something. No one needed me to stay quiet. No one was deciding my place for me. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my hands. They looked the same, but they felt different. I slept that night, not deeply, but enough. Enough to wake up without panic. In the morning, the woman met me in the lobby. She brought a bag with a muffin, a banana, and a cup of tea. "You don't owe me anything," she said before I could speak. "Just take today one step at a time." We drove through quiet streets as the sun came up. The community center was a plain brick building with a faded sign. Nothing impressive, but inside it felt alive. People talking softly, phones ringing, a bulletin board full of handwritten notes and flyers. She introduced me to a few people, not with my story, just my name. For the first time in years, no one looked at me like a problem. The quiet question that changed everything. Later that morning, I sat across from a counselor in a small office. She didn't ask me why I was there right away. She asked something else. "What do you want now?" The question caught me off guard. I opened my mouth, then closed it. No one had asked me that in years. "I don't know," I said honestly. She nodded. "That's a good place to start." We talked slowly, about my work history, about my life, about what I was good at. I downplayed everything at first. Habit. She stopped me gently. "You've spent a long time making yourself smaller. Let's not do that here." Those words stayed with me. By the end of the day, I had a temporary plan. A small room in a shared housing program, a part-time job opening at a local office that needed front desk help. Nothing glamorous, but it was mine.
Self-doubt tries to follow me. That night, alone in the small room, doubt crept in. Who did I think I was? Starting over at my age? Trying to build something after being thrown away? I thought about calling my son. I imagined his voice, the apology that might come too late. I didn't call, not because I was angry, but because I needed to hear my own voice first. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. The silence felt different here. It wasn't empty, it was waiting. The silent decision. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. I sat on the edge of the bed and made a decision so quiet, even I didn't fully recognize it at the time. I would stop explaining myself. I would stop apologizing for existing. I would build something slowly, patiently, without needing anyone's approval. Not to prove them wrong, but to remember who I was. Mehnat and transformation, one ordinary day at a time. The job was simple: answering phones, scheduling appointments, greeting people. At first, my hands shook a little. I hadn't felt confident in years. But routine has a way of rebuilding people. Day by day, I showed up early, I learned names, I paid attention. I saved small amounts of money. I opened my own bank account. That alone felt powerful. I walked in the evenings, read books again, wrote in a notebook before bed. Some days were hard. I cried quietly, doubted myself, and wondered if this was all too late. But I kept going. Weeks turned into months. I moved into a tiny studio apartment. One window, one plant on the sill. It was enough. I started smiling again without forcing it. Time passing without announcement. Life didn't change in big moments. It changed in mornings, in waking up without dread, in choosing what to eat, in not being watched. I stood taller without noticing, spoke more clearly, stopped shrinking. I didn't post about it, didn't announce it. My revenge wasn't loud. It was steady. When the past noticed. I ran into someone from my old life at a grocery store one afternoon. She looked surprised. She said, "You look different." I smiled. "I feel different." Word traveled quietly. I heard my son had asked about me, that he was concerned. I didn't respond. Not yet. I wasn't finished becoming myself.
My life didn't suddenly become impressive. There was no big promotion, no dramatic transformation, no moment where people clapped. But something important happened quietly. I became steady. The office trusted me more with time, then with responsibility, then with decisions. I trained a new hire, then another. Someone once said, "I don't know how you keep everything so calm around here." I smiled. I didn't explain. I had lived in chaos disguised as comfort. This was peace disguised as simplicity. I started taking small online courses in the evenings, basic office management, scheduling systems, communication. Nothing flashy, just growth. A year passed, then another. I moved into a slightly bigger apartment, bought myself a new couch, hung pictures I liked. No one told me where to put things. That alone felt like success. When they finally saw me, it happened on an ordinary afternoon. I was leaving work when I heard my name. I turned around. It was my son. He looked older, tired, smaller somehow. We stood there for a moment, both unsure. "You look well," he said. I nodded. "I am." He hesitated. "I didn't know where you went," he admitted. I didn't correct him. He looked around at my workplace, the building, the calm. "He heard you're doing good," he said. I smiled again. "I am." There was no anger in me, no satisfaction either, just clarity. He apologized quietly, not perfectly, not completely. I listened. I didn't rush to forgive. I didn't punish him either. I simply didn't step backward. That was the revenge. The quiet respect. After that day, things shifted. People spoke to me differently.
listened differently. Not because I demanded it, because I expected it. I no longer explained why I deserved space. I simply took it. No one questioned it. Emotional closure. Some nights I still think about that hallway, that sentence, that silence, but it doesn't hurt the same way. It taught me something. I wasn't thrown out of my life. I was released from a place that no longer deserved me. I don't hate anyone. I don't wish anyone pain. I wish myself peace, and I have it. Lesson. What I learned too late, but just in time. Here's what I know now. Being quiet doesn't mean being weak, but staying silent when you're shrinking will slowly erase you. Love should never cost your dignity. Family should never feel like a favor. And revenge doesn't need an audience. Sometimes the strongest response is growth so calm, so complete, that the people who underestimated you can only watch in silence. That night at the bus station didn't save me. It reminded me. I was never worthless. I had just forgotten myself. And choosing myself, quietly, changed everything.
Living without asking permission. There are mornings now when I wake up and forget, for a moment, that my life was ever different. I wake up before my alarm. The light comes in through the window at an angle I recognize. The room smells like coffee instead of anxiety. That still feels new. I choose my clothes without worrying who will see me. I eat when I'm hungry. I leave dishes in the sink sometimes and don't apologize to anyone for it. These are small freedoms, but they add up. I used to think freedom was loud. I thought it came with announcements and dramatic exits. I was wrong. Freedom is quiet. It feels like breathing without fear. The weight I no longer carry. I didn't realize how heavy my life had been until it wasn't anymore. For years, I carried the emotional weight of everyone else's comfort. I worried about being in the way, about being useful enough, about earning my place. I lived like my presence was something that had to be justified. Now, when I enter a room, I don't shrink. I don't rush to explain myself. I don't lower my voice to avoid inconvenience. And the strange thing is, no one pushes back, because people respond to how you treat yourself. That lesson took me decades to learn. What silence really means. People think silence means weakness. It doesn't. Silence can be patience. It can be strategy. It can be survival. My revenge was never about proving anyone wrong. It was about proving myself right. Right about my worth. Right about my strength. Right about my ability to start again. I didn't announce my growth. I didn't send updates. I let time do the talking. When respect finally arrived. There were moments when I noticed the shift. A coworker asking for my advice. A neighbor inviting me to dinner. Someone saying, "I trust your judgment." No one used to say that to me. Not because I lacked judgment, but because I never claimed it. Now I do. Quietly. Looking back without pain. I don't replay that New Year's Eve the same way anymore. I remember it clearly, but it no longer controls me. I can see it now for what it was. A door closing, and another one opening. Not loudly, not magically, but honestly. That night didn't break me. It clarified me. What I would tell the woman I used to be that night at the bus station. If I could sit across from the woman I was that night at the bus station, I wouldn't rush her. I wouldn't tell her everything will be okay. I would just say this: you are not difficult. You are not too much. You are not in the way. You have been surviving in a place that asked you to disappear. And then I would tell her something even more important. One day, you will wake up in a life that feels like yours again. A different kind of revenge.
People expect revenge to look like confrontation, arguments, regret, public moments. Mine didn't look like that. Mine looked like consistency. It looked like learning new skills at night when I was tired, like showing up even when no one was watching, like choosing dignity over bitterness. The people who underestimated me didn't lose anything. I gained myself. That was enough. The final lesson. Here is the truth I live by now. You don't owe your silence to anyone who benefits from it. You don't have to stay where you're shrinking, and you don't need permission to grow. Sometimes life pushes you out not to punish you, but to save you. And sometimes the most powerful revenge is becoming so grounded, so whole, so at peace, that the people who once dismissed you no longer recognize the version of you standing in front of them. Not because you changed who you were, but because you finally remembered.